If the police would have just followed him and taken my police report seriously, I have said for years, I felt that I would and could have saved the girls from any trauma, if they would have looked at my report and taken me seriously.
Jeffrey Epstein survivor Alicia Arden recounting her story of abuse 28 years later as the House Oversight Committee prepares to depose former Attorney General Bill Barr tomorrow. He is the first of several former officials to be subpoenaed, and Tuesday's deadline for DOJ to hand over the Epstein files draws closer. Joining me now, Jess Michaels, an Epstein survivor assaulted in 1991 when she was just 22 years old. Today, she is the founder and driving force behind 3 Joanne Sexual Assault First Aid, teaching people to know what to do when someone says they have been assaulted. Jess, thank you for joining me, and thank you so much for doing this work. First question to you is what you think of the Oversight Committee subpoenas and what you are hoping to hear from these former officials.
Firstly, thank you so much for having me, Alex. I really appreciate you including survivor voices. And what I think about the Oversight Committee subpoenas, it's missing survivor voices. Any real investigation would include survivor voices. It's also missing key players that were decision makers when poor decisions were made, like Alex Acosta.
So let's talk about one of the themes here, and it is how rich and powerful Epstein was and how he used his connections to lure and entrap young women. Here's a bit more. Let's listen to it. It's from Alicia Arden.
It was just becoming so traumatic and upsetting that I was even in that position. I'm just there to show you my portfolio and what is my call time for the photo to be in Victoria's Secrets. And that's all I wanted. And that's all I wanted. And I ran out of the room and I just felt I have to go to the police.
What goes through your mind, Jess, when you hear survivors say police did not take them seriously? And do you believe that he was, and in some ways still, is being protected?
Of course. I mean, actions speak louder than words. And what I've heard across the board from other survivors is not only their reports, but then we're even seeing it now with continued interviews that we're doing. We're speaking up. Survivors have been speaking up since Maria Farmer spoke up to the FBI back in 1994. Alicia spoke up in 1996. It has not been through a lack of speaking up by survivors.
What is that like? I mean, you're saying 1994, 1996, years like that. What is that like to think we've been speaking out this long, and yet here we are today, still unresolved?
Yeah. And I still see it on social media. Keep sharing your story. Tell everybody about it. We have. People think that because they're just seeing me talking about this now, miss that I've actually been talking about it for 4 years. It feels like a betrayal of the one job that government, law enforcement, and justice have, which is keeping us safe. And so they're doing the exact opposite. Everything is the exact opposite of keeping us safe, letting us feel safe after harm has happened.
And you've said that you've never heard the words Epstein survivor come out of the White House. How do you feel about the way the President of the United States has handled this?
It's horrifically disappointing, and it is discouraging to believe that anyone, I mean, it's Congress, it's the DOJ, it's Donald Trump, it's everyone involved with this is taking part in covering up. And if you're not centering survivor voices, then I'm just hearing a lot of noise coming out. And that's what we keep falling for, is for all of the noise.
And, you know, you mentioned DOJ. How did you feel when you saw the president's personal lawyer and current Deputy Attorney General meet with Ghislaine MAXWELL?
I have one thing to say about this, and I really want people to hear me, and I want them to remember this. Ghislaine MAXWELL started dating and working for Jeffrey Epstein in her late 20s. And stayed working with him, I guess, through mid-30s. She molested teen girls. That one fact, and she's convicted, that one fact should have caused the key to be thrown away, because there's not a parent in this country that could empathize with a grown woman molesting teen girls. Not a single parent should be empathizing with that. That should have been enough. But it went farther, that she sold those teen girls. And so actions, like I said, speak louder than words. The president's lawyer went and spoke to this person that molested teen girls rather than actually hear survivor voices.
And she now sits in a, we'll just say, cushier place than she was before, markedly more comfortable.
She is more protected than survivors are in this moment.
That's sobering. What about this bipartisan push in Congress to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files?
Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine MAXWELL, she was moved to a new prison facility in Texas this month. Now, her arrival is not sitting well with some of her fellow inmates. You see, most of the inmates are there for white-collar, non-violent crimes. Some of them are just not okay with sharing a space with someone who conspired with a sex trafficker, a convicted sex trafficker herself. CNN's Caitlin Polance has more on what's happening inside the prison. Caitlin, good morning.
Good morning, Victor. The atmosphere inside that all-women's prison camp in Bryan, Texas, where Ghislaine MAXWELL, the Epstein conspirator, where she now is, it's tense, and things have changed since she arrived about 2 weeks ago. Victor, what has happened is that the inmates, they have been warned by prison officials in recent days that they should use their discretion if they're going to talk about Ghislaine MAXWELL outside of the prison. There was one inmate, I was told, a woman named Julie Howell, who provided a quote to a newspaper saying she was disgusted with MAXWELL being there. MAXWELL, a convicted sex trafficker, while all of these women in this prison essentially are white-collar, non-violent defendants of crimes. This woman, Julie Howell, she provided this quote, and then prison officials pulled her out of a puppy training class at the prison camp and sent her away to a detention center in Houston, moved her out of the Bryan prison camp, which it is prison, so it is a difficult place to live, but it also is much more comfortable than other types of facilities across the federal prison system for the inmates who live there. The lawyer of this woman, Julie Howell, Patrick McLean, he told me in talking about what happened here, nobody's going to say anything about Ghislaine MAXWELL now. Are you kidding me? So that's just a glimpse of what it's like inside that prison. One thing that I have learned as well is that Ghislaine MAXWELL may not be eligible for all of the programs that women in that prison camp are able to participate in, or at least apply for. One of those programs, puppy training. Just mentioned Julie Howell was in that puppy training class. Puppy training is something that people in that prison can apply to do, to train service dogs for people when they're puppies in their early moments of life as dogs. The CEO of the group Canine Companions told me this week that Ghislaine MAXWELL, as someone convicted of sex trafficking minor girls, she would not be eligible to apply for that program and be able to have a puppy inside the Bryan, Texas federal prison camp.
And these accusers, as far as we can tell, they are mostly keeping them at arm's length. There is obviously a ton of secrecy within the past month plus with this shambolic blowback and handling within the administration of the whole Epstein saga. And instead of focusing on, as you were pointing out, trying to approach these very straightforward, very understanding, very human stories with any modicum of care, of course, this president and this administration are instead leaning into things like trying to wield the nation's intelligence and vast federal law enforcement apparatus to try to change the subject to maybe we should think about putting Barack Obama or James Comey in jail for a completely made-up scandal that Donald Trump would much rather talk about than the Epstein saga.
Do you think some of what we're seeing happen in D.C. right now is a part of that distraction effort?
I mean, that may be an added benefit for him, but because it has been a top policy priority of his for years, dating back to his first administration and during the Joe Biden years when he was out of office, to wield the U.S. military against Democratic dominant cities he doesn't like and his political enemies. Maybe it's distracting or turning some of the media focus away from the Epstein stuff somewhat. But when was his top political priority, or at least one of his top political priorities for so many years, I don't think it should be simply dismissed as a quote-unquote distraction.
And he's still facing heat, not just from his own base and people, who are incredibly frustrated by all of this, but on Capitol Hill. I mean, Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie say they're going to try to bring survivors to speak. People want them to be able to testify formally as well. Do you think any of that is really going to happen, and could it change the dynamic here?
Well, it's a little bit hard to see how much of that, particularly from Democratic lawmakers, is going to break through, considering who holds the keys to power in Washington right now. Having said that, when it comes to the casual cruelty of the Trump administration, when you're looking at their authoritarian power grabs in D.C., Los Angeles, etc., and how they're handling the Epstein saga. And
you can see people are not happy about Maxwell getting a cushier prison situation, including apparently some people at that prison. She's being attacked while she's sitting in her nice new jail cell, or nicer new jail cell. She's being attacked by all sorts of people, including the people that she harmed and that Epstein harmed, and that, the family of those people. Now, I want to make one thing very clear. I actually don't have an issue with her conditions, the conditions she currently has, because I want to make this clear, and this is controversial to a lot of Americans because you guys are used to, frankly, a cruel system of prisons. But if you look to how prisons operate in countries like Norway, even the hardened criminals get nicer prisons than exist in the U.S., and they have lower crime rates in Norway, and criminals who go through their system, which is less cruel, are less likely to reoffend. And so my issue isn't that Maxwell isn't being held in the cruelest possible conditions, right? Because everyone deserves humane treatment, even the monsters. That's a mark of a civilized society. The issue is, why does she get this special treatment and no one else does? That's the scandal. That's the injustice. That's the, at least in my view, smoking gun for some sort of secret deal between her and Trump and whatnot, right? Whether we have proof for it or not, it's alleged, I guess, but that's the evidence you would need. Because that's the thing here. She was locked up in a much rougher place, deservedly so, given what she did. And now she's being sent to a place for people who, although causing harm to society, did not cause the same kind of despicable harm, if we're being clear. And so that's why a lot of people are upset. You want to make all prisons nicer than in United States, in your country, what have you, I would be the first to support it. But somebody, the rich and wealthy and well-connected Ghislaine MAXWELL, who flew on planes with millionaires and billionaires doing unspeakable things to innocents, and now she gets a cushier thing because she knows somebody, that's injustice any way you slice it.